Okay, we're at 1 minute past the hour, so I'm going to get started. I'm just too excited. There's too much in today not to get started straight away and start with this fantastic agenda of speakers and information that we've got to pass on to you all. So welcome to our M365 Community Day. So anyone that is a regular to the Cambridge Power Platform user group knows that once a year we do a full day event. We've done Power Platform boot camps in the past where we have 8 or 9 speakers during the day. And this year we really wanted to focus on something close to my heart and obviously that I'm trying to be quite influential in as an area. For me, women in tech is really, really important. And to stress, it's not about exclusion. There are some guys in here. We've got the lovely Luke in the background helping us with the call. We've also got Sancho Harker, MVP, in the background as a moderator for us. It's about inclusion. So it's about including as many people, as diverse an audience as we can, and celebrating the success of women in tech. So we've got some fantastic speakers today, and it's my job to introduce and to mediate and to make sure that everybody is having a good time. But I also wanted to introduce you to a couple of faces. I don't know if you can bring yourselves on screen, Luke. We've got Luke and Amber, the lovely Luke and Amber in the background, working away. There they are. Amber's been dealing with all of our administrative and speaker liaison. Thank you so much, Amber, for everything you do. And Luke is my techie. So he's in the background making sure that everybody that needs to speak can speak and all the presentations are running smoothly. So thank you very much to my fantastic team there in the background. Okay, let's get started. Let's jump straight in. So what we've got for you on the agenda to, oh, yeah, good point. Okay, so we always must be aware that we are in a meeting with others. We need to be friendly and patient and all of these things on the screen. Now, it goes without saying that when you're in presentations with first-time speakers and when you've got speakers that have taken time out of their life to either record or to attend and discuss something with us, that we need to be kind and considerate. But today we do have a lot of first-time speakers, so I'm especially asking today for a little bit of patience and understanding should we have any technical issues or speaker wobbles. They happen, and I really want to give these speakers the opportunity to come and pass on their skills and their knowledge. So let's be nice, let's be kind. We are on a webinar, so you can't interrupt the speakers, but we do have chat going down. I say here because it's there for me. We do have the chat going on down the side. Feel free to ask questions during sessions as well. Where possible, and if it's appropriate, I'll interrupt the speakers or Luke will, and we'll ask that question directly of the speaker during session. But where it's more appropriate, we'll leave those questions to the end. If you do put something inappropriate in chat, we reserve the right to remove you from the meeting. Also, please be aware that we are recording and that this will go on to YouTube at the end of the day. So if you don't want to be on that recording when you come, should we take you off mute or bring you in to ask a question, if you don't want to be on camera, then please don't turn your camera on because this is being recorded. There you go. Exits are here and here. Okay. So this is the agenda for today, loads and loads to get through. I'm going to do a small introduction about me and how I got to where I've got to in life. And then we've got Cheryl and Daisy, fantastic mother and daughter duo, really looking forward to this session. Moving on to some Viva topics, we've also got Viva Suite coming. We've got our fantastic, and I know she was in the chat, I don't know if she's disappeared already, fantastic keynote speaker, Charlotte Light, who I've had the pleasure of working with at the Aztec Group, to come and tell us about her story of success in technology. And then after a break, we're going to look at Syntex, we're going to look at Teams, we're going to look at OneDrive, Outlook, and accessibility. All really important topics, just showing you the diversity of skills that we've got in the women that are coming to speak for you today. So let's crack on, because I'm already eating into my own time. Not much to say about me. Hopefully those of you that have attended before know me. If you don't, ping me, find me on LinkedIn or on Twitter and let's chat. If you're enthusiastic and love all things Power Platform or business applications like I do, then let's have a coffee. virtual or otherwise. I'm based in Cambridge in the UK, so I'm really easy to get hold of. A little bit about me. So I'm a CEO of Business Cloud Integration Limited, who are the developers of Casper 365, one of the sponsors of today's session, and who you'll probably see in the background of my screen. I'm a massive evangelist of the Power Platform and Office 365, SharePoint Online. SharePoint in particular is where I come from, hence being known as SharePoint Sharon on LinkedIn. I'm a dual MVP this year, both business applications and M365 apps and services, which also encompasses the team's workloads. So I spend a lot of time and get some swag from Microsoft to work with them on new iterations of product, what's coming next, and making sure that we're out there sharing the information about how to use those products in the marketplace. So I'm very much a speaker that is concerned with business value. So Getting to Value Faster, the title of my book, which I'm still writing, will be coming out hopefully in the next 12 months. But very much my focus is around how we make businesses success. And it's become very clear to me over the last few years that that only happens when people have the opportunity to share their skills and to share their stories. And what better platform than a Women in Tech platform to show what powerful speakers we have out there, what information we have to share both with businesses and from businesses to help make everybody in the tech community successful. So my role here is really to pay it forward. So as a community leader, my job is to bring together everybody to share their information and to make sure that we're all doing that in an environment that is inclusive and is diverse. So as a woman in technology, I've been there. We've all been there, where you are the only woman in the room, or you are the only techie in the room, or sometimes you're the only techie woman in the room. And it was scary for me in my younger years. As I've got older, I don't let that worry me as much. But I'd love to see more women coming into those rooms, coming into those environments, so that it's no longer an issue. My hope is that that's less of an issue today as it was when I first started out. But we need to get better, and we need to make technology an accessible career for those coming into or considering as they come out of education which career to come into. So a career path in technology is one of my key goals to introduce women to. So today, like I say, we're going to show you those that are at the start of that journey and those that have succeeded in that journey, specifically Charlotte, who's going to come along and tell us what it's like to be at the top in one of the organizations with a tech role. And I'm really looking forward to her session. So the last two sessions of the day are actually speakers that can't be with us in person due to time zones, and they're actually quite short sessions, which is great because it's been a long day already. We've had so much information passed over. So I think we're going to play the first one straight away. So again, this is Tammy, who has sent us a recording of her session about accessibility for website and mobile, which is really important. And Tammy, here we go, some information here about Tammy. And we're absolutely delighted to have her as part of the Women in Tech event for the Cambridge Power Platform User Group. So I'm going to hand over to Luke, who's hopefully going to be able to play her recorded session for us.
Hello, my name is Tammy. In this session, I will be talking about accessibility testing. With this session, I'm also going to be focusing on both web and mobile. A little bit about me. I have a bachelor's degree in management information systems. Also, I have worked as a software tester for about 5 years. Currently, I'm also working as a software tester at a company. Also, I am a blog owner of developit.com, where I talk about software testing for beginners. Also, I plan to include information about how to use Python and use automation with that. A little known fact about me is I do like to crochet. So on today's agenda, we are going to talk about what is accessibility, why is accessibility so important, what are some of the guidelines to follow, and accessibility tools that we can use for both web and mobile and screen readers. Now, there are some examples of accessibility that I wanted to point out. As you can see here from these photos, we may see accessibility when we're in the elevator, where you'll see where there's Braille written underneath the numbers. Also, if we see buses or if we use a bus, we might see a bus with wheelchair access. Also, if we are crossing the street or if we're at a midway where we have to stop at the red light, we may see these push buttons to walk across the street. So again, these are some examples of accessibility. Now, what is accessibility? According to Wikipedia, accessibility is the design of products, devices, services, vehicles, or environments to be usable by people with disabilities. The concept of accessible design and practice of accessible development ensures both direct access and indirect access, meaning compatibility with a person-assisted technology, for example, computer screen readers. So even though we know what accessibility is, why is it so important? Well, according to the World Health Organization in 2022, on their website, an estimated 1.3 billion people, which is about 16% of the global population, currently experience significant disability. Now, accessibility is also important in 3 ways that are listed here. It saves time, it improves the overall experience for customers, for your company or your organization, and it also is important because it's a team effort itself. Now, one of the things that I wanted to mention out of the 3 of why accessibility is so important, accessibility as a team effort does not just fall upon one person. It also involves several roles within the company or organization in which different projects are worked on. This includes roles such as product owners, project managers, content writers, if you're a software tester, if you also working in UX UI design, and also if you're working in automation as well. So these are definitely roles that are also involved, but again, it takes a team effort to also make sure accessibility is being recognized and used within these projects. Now, who benefits from accessibility? Well, web accessibility encompasses all disabilities that affect access to the web, and here are several of them that are included. Visual. This includes blindness and other visual impairments such as cataracts, glaucoma, and color blindness. If there is cognitive, then it could be issues with memory, thinking, or judgment at that point. Or if it's auditory, this could include device ranges of hearing impairments, such as a person who is deaf or maybe have a loss of hearing. Then you also have physical. This includes mobile and physical impairments, such as a person who has arthritis or maybe cerebral palsy. Now, even though we have seen on the previous slide some people who experience disabilities, there's also people who benefit without disabilities as well. There could be temporary disabilities. Maybe you lost your glasses and you're unable to see at that point. Maybe it's a situational limitation. Maybe you're in an environment where you cannot listen to audio. A great example could be that if you're on the bus or if you're in a location where I'm at where there's the subway or the metro, you may be unable to listen to audio out loud. So either you put on your earbuds, or maybe you forgot those, or if you wanted to turn on the closed captioning on your phone, then you can do that in order to see it instead of hearing it. Then if it's sunny outside, maybe it's hard for you to see anything on your phone that you're working on. Then you also have different devices that also affects accessibility, such as your mobile phone, your smartwatches, or other devices with small screens, or even older technology can also affect the way accessibility is, Now, again, accessibility is not just about people with disabilities, it's about people. So, as we looked at from the previous slides, accessibility affects people who have a disability and a person who doesn't have a disability as well. So, it encompasses everyone. Now, when it comes down to accessibility, there are some things that you can do in order for you to evaluate. Currently, on this slide, we're talking about using the web accessibility. When you're working on projects, it's really a good idea to evaluate accessibility early as possible and throughout the development process. This will allow you to identify accessibility problems early. There are tools that can help you with evaluating accessibility, which we'll talk about shortly. But before we get to that, we want to also talk about some guidelines to follow when you're working with accessibility testing. The guideline to follow is an example here is the WCAG. There's many other guidelines too, depending on the location you're at. But one of the guidelines to follow is the WCAG, which is Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. Currently, it's at 2.1 standard, but you can go to their website at the WCAG website to see if they have updated the standard from 2.1 to maybe 2.2 or so. But when you're working with the WCAG, there are 4 principles of accessibilities that you can follow. This is called POUR, which is broken down into perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. When you're working with perceivable as a principle, it makes it easier for users to see and hear the content. Operable is basically provides users with enough time to read and use the content. Are you given enough time to be able to use the content, or is your site just like on a time or set on a time where you're just flipping through quickly? Does it also provide ways to help the users navigate, find content, and determine where they are on the website or mobile? That's operable. Understandable. Making content readable and understandable. Will the user be able to understand what is on the website, the content itself? And with robust, users must be able to access the content as technologies advance. This content should remain accessible. So again, as we see, as technology actually evolves, the content must still remain accessible and be able to be interpreted, such as voice commands or screen readers being used when it comes down to using the principle for robust. Now, there are some other components to web accessibility, and this includes using the focus, keyboard, color contrast ratio, and dark mode. Again, there are other components for web accessibility, but right now I just wanted to focus on a couple of these items here. So when you're working with the focus component for web accessibility, the current element that is being interacted with. So if you have on your screen reader, which we'll talk about shortly, if you have on your screen reader, then for your website, whatever it's focused on at that point, let's just say it's my website, developit.com. I have a logo in the left-hand corner. Then when I turn on my screen reader, it should select that focus. It should mark on that focus, highlighting a ring around it to indicate that that's the first focus, and that's what it's going to be focused on when you go to that site. Keyboard navigation, which is the expectation, is that the user should be able to navigate to a web page and interact using the keyboard, such as using the tab, the spacing, the enter key, up and down arrows, or the escape key. And a great example of using keyboard navigation is navigating through a form. So when you select the form, you can tab, 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 press enter, go up and down arrow within the form. Are you able to use the keyboard navigation when you're going through the form? Also, the third one that I mentioned as a component for web accessibility is color contrast ratio. This measures the difference of brightness between colors. So a great example of this is, what if your website has a black background and it has red text on it? Is that a good color contrast ratio for people who are who have accessibility, if they're working with accessibility? Or what if you have a white background with white text? Is that a good color contrast ratio? So again, you want to make sure that your background or your text colors or things like that on your website are very, very good, so that it can be accessible for both people who have accessibility issues or don't. Then you have your dark mode. I mentioned AA standards, which is a 4:5:1 ratio. And when you're working with dark mode, how does your website look when you enable dark mode? Does it look okay? Are the images still okay? Is your text, as I mentioned again, are they okay as well? Are you able to see? So again, these are some of the components for web accessibility. These are the 4 that I wanted to list it, but there are several others that that you can also use as well for when you're working with web accessibility. Now, one that is also good for a component for web accessibility, and again, also for mobile, is using alt tags. Now, when you have images on your website, you also want to make sure that it has alternative text, making sure that this text is very short and descriptive on what that image is about. A perfect example of this is my website that I'm showing you. So on one of my blog posts, I actually have a typewriter that has, you see update here, but in the code, you'll see that it has the alternative text saying typewriter with the word update. Now, again, that's a short description of what that image is all about. So if I have my screen reader on, I can be able to select that image and it will read out that text for me saying that it's a typewriter with the word update. So again, when it comes down to working with images, you just want to make sure that you have alternative text on when you're working with accessibility. Now, when it comes to auditing a web page, there's automated tools, there's the keyboard navigation, there's screen readers, and then there's inspecting elements with the development tools, which we'll talk about shortly. Now, when you're working with automated tools, there's something that you can do, which is run a report. When it comes down to working with the browser, one of them that I wanted to mention is the Chrome browser. The Chrome browser have tools such as Lighthouse in there where you can run a report on how your website is performing. So when you go to the Chrome browser, you'll just go to look for more tools and developer tools. And then you should see something called Lighthouse in order for you to run the report. If you also want to use Wave, you'll just go to the Chrome Web Store and you'll look for Wave, and then you can install that to use that. Now, here's an example of how you can run the report using Lighthouse. So again, as you can see, you'll see that I have accessed my developer tools through the Chrome browser, and you see Lighthouse is selected. And then over to the left-hand side is my website of my blog post. Now, right now, as you can see, I have everything set as a default to just analyze or run a report of how my desktop, I wanted to see how it looks on my desktop. I can change it to see how it will look on a mobile phone, which you can do as well. So for me, I'm looking for performance, accessibility, what are some best practices for my website? Am I missing SEOs, which is search engine optimization? So after I have that already open, then I can click on analyze page load, and then it will also examine what is going on with my website. And then it'll give me some ideas of how I can be able to update that and make changes effectively for accessibility. Again, you'll see an example of how you can be able to use Lighthouse through the Chrome browser. And you can change it again through the mobile, or you can use desktop. Now, another report that you can run is using Wave, as I mentioned before. This is where you can go into your Chrome web store and you can download that. And then you can also do the same thing as well. You can run it, the report, and see what other issues are going on. So again, I have ran a report using Wave. And as you can see, the results from this shows what's going on with my site. I have a lot of work to do on my site. But again, as you can see, it breaks it down to like saying that I do not have certain things that are really, really important for, accessibility. So I definitely need to update that information in order for it to be accessible. Currently, over to the left-hand side, you will see tabs that says a summary, detail, reference, order, structure, and contrast. So right now I left it underneath the summary. So as you can see, it tells you how many errors you have, how many contrast errors you have, how many alerts that it's warning you, how many ARIA issues I have, which is I need to work on updating my roles or the roles and things like that for my website and what type of issues I'm experiencing. So with this, it does give you an overall summary of what's happening with your site. Also, too, you can go into details tab and it'll also break down what you need to also update as well. So as we saw on the previous slide, we saw that there were two reports that you can run. You can use Lighthouse for free. You can also use Wave for free in order to run those reports and see what's going on with the performance or what's going on with your site. Now, there are some other testing tools that I call as a checklist that you can also use. So there's WebAIMS checklist, where it will also show you some of the WCAGs, as I mentioned, some of the things that you can do in order to make sure that you have that your site is accessible. Then you also have the keyboard that you can also test, as I mentioned earlier, that you can test on to make sure that you can tab, space, and move around on your website, or if you're working with the form. Then we have what is called screen readers, which we're going to talk about shortly. And we've also spoke about color contrast ratio calculators earlier, where also if you go on WebAIMS website, you'll also see where you can use the color contrast ratio and make sure that your site is either a pass or fail. Now, WCAG also has success criteria for accessibility testing. There are 3 types of success criteria that WCAG use. It's the single A, the double A, and the triple A. The single A is the lowest or bare minimum conformance level. The double A is the mid-range conformance level. This basically is, for example, where I work at is what we use. We use the double A because it's the mid-ground. It's where we can be able to, we use that one. And then you have the triple A. This is the highest level of performance. You'll see sites such as the National Institute of Health or Center for Disease Control uses triple A for their success criteria. Screen readers. Now, in order to turn on in order to use accessibility, you'll probably hear something like enable or use screen readers. Now, there are a couple of screen readers that you can use in order for you to use, accessibility. Now, when you're working with the desktop, then you'll see something called NVDA, which is a free download for you to use. You can go and download that. And once you download that, you can also enable it and it will announce what's on your screen. Also, you will have something called VoiceOver for your Mac. If you're a Mac user, you just use the Command plus F5 to turn it on. Now, there are some other tools that you can use, but they will cost. And one of them that I didn't mention is JAWS. So you can use JAWS, but there is a price behind that. When you're working with the mobile phone, there's something called VoiceOver for iOS. If you're working with Android, specifically if you have a Google Pixel phone, you'll see something called TalkBack. Now, if you have an Android Samsung like I do, you'll probably see something called Google Assistant or Voice Assistant on your phone. But again, these are screen readers that you use to be able to announce what's going on your screen. Now, when we're working with mobile, here is an example of a screen. Here's an example. So once you go into your settings on your mobile phone, you should see something called accessibility, and then you can be able to enable it. Again, you'll see that this is a screenshot of an Android for voice assistant. So once you do that, then it will be enabled, and then it will go through and announce or read what's on your screen. Now, if you are using iOS or, for example, iPad, then again, you can go through your settings, find accessibility, look for VoiceOver, and you can enable that in order for you to start hearing what's going on your screen. Now, when it comes down to the iPad or other screen readers, such as the voice assistant or TalkBack, there are other features that you can use to make modifications. Maybe you want the audio to be a little bit higher. Maybe you want your speaking rate to be faster. So you can go in to make modifications of how you want your VoiceOver or your screen reader to be when you're working with that. Now, working with screen reader, there are some gestures for the screen reader on mobile. So here are some examples that you will see on the screen that you can use when you're working with both iOS and also Android. And if you're unable to find all of them, you can always go to iOS Apple website and look for screen reader gestures, and the same thing for Android. You can just go to the Android's website and look for screen reader gestures. And this will allow you to be able to know which gestures to use when you actually have accessibility on. So let's just say you wanted to touch the item you just tapped. You can also use a swipe left to select the previous item, swipe right to select the next item, scroll up one page if you want to use the 3-finger swipe. If you want to double tap, that means you're activating the selected item. Or if you want to scroll down one page, you'll use the 3-finger swipe up. Now, there are other things to test when it comes down to working with both the website and mobile itself. When you're working with websites, you also want to see how well it works if it's in Zoom. How big can it get? How large can you get to the Zoom? Like, can it go up to 200 or 300? Will your page or your website actually, how can you say? The best word is, once it goes maximized, will it start laying over other content? Will it start going off the page itself when it's maximized? The same thing for the mobile phone, using magnification in Zoom. Will that also just like go off the page? Will it actually overlay other content as well? Using text size. What's the text size for this? Like, do you want to make sure that your text size is large or small? How will it affect if it's smaller or if it's larger? And making sure there's no flashing content for the web, also for the mobile as well. Now, when you're working with the mobile, as I mentioned earlier, you'll see text size that you want to test, font size as well, small screen sizes. Now, there are some phones that are very, very small. Then there are some phones that are kind of medium or large. How will this look on various phones? And also talking about how will it look if it's in landscape mode. So even though most of the time, and I always forget this myself, when you're working with testing the mobile phone, you also want to make sure that it looks good in both portrait mode and in landscape mode. And also, as I didn't mention here, dark mode. So these are some other things you want to test to make sure that accessibility is working good. Now, here are some tips to great design experience. You want to make your labels and actions descriptive, but not too long. This should be given a meaningful name so screen readers can easily identify the links with the content. You also want to provide page titles and headers on every page to help users rely on screen reader. You want to make sure the information for a specific action is focusable to the user. You want to also add alternative text to all of your images. This replaces the images in case the image failed to load. So you also want to choose your colors as well. So you want to ensure the colors on your site contrast very well so it can distinguish between the different elements on your page. So with that, you also want to start building accessibility into your projects at the beginning so that it can save time and money and not be placed on the backlog itself. If you have any questions, you can always contact me at tldevelopbit@gmail.com. You can also go to my website at developbit.com, where I will be talking about software testing, and I will also be talking about accessibility as well. And then you can also reach out to me on Facebook at DevelopBit Quality. Thank you so much.
Okay, awesome session there. I thought that was really useful content, something that I think we can all use, and certainly some tools there that themselves are accessible to everyone. So really, really great stuff. Thank you so much, Tammy. And I'm sure as that goes out online, there'll probably be some questions in the YouTube chat to follow. Nobody's raised any questions in this session, so we'll move straight on. Thanks to everybody that has attended today. Thank you to my team in the background. We have the lovely Luke and Amber, who have been moderating all day and doing all the speaker prep for us. We have Sancho Harker also in the background, who has been in the chat and helping out with any questions during the course of the day. And it's been an absolute delight to be your host or hostess for the Cambridge Power Platform Women in Tech event. So the M365 Community Days have loads of events on. Please do go over to Community Days and you'll be able to see loads of events on their site, which are run by user groups and communities, and specifically, those events that are community driven. So that's where volunteers like me and my team get together and ask a bunch of speakers to come along and help share and learn. So, as I said, it's been a fantastic day. Thank you to all of our speakers. We'll put all of the sessions up onto YouTube for you. Hopefully they'll be there before International Women's Day, which I think is about midweek on the 8th of March. And thank you so much for attending. We really appreciate your time here. And once again, see you soon at the next event.